Thanks for your company. The details now. The National Democratic Congress is making a case for the appointment of the National Peace Council as mediator in talks to disband party militias in its latest letter to President Akufo-Addo. The president, in his response to their earlier letter, rejected almost every proposal made by the party and described portions of that letter as obvious misrepresentations. Now, this second letter to the president, the NDC insists the scope of the meeting should be widened to include other political parties. Here is a News Desk report.
The letter, signed by National Chairman Samuel Ofosu-Ampofo and addressed directly to the president, makes a strong case for wider participation in the meeting to disband the political party militia. The party could not resist the temptation but to draw the president's attention to the latest JoyNews documentary titled Militias in the Heart of the City, adding that the unchallenged assertion in the documentary that these vigilantes are sponsored by the NPP and led by a personality who until recently was his personal bodyguard casts doubts on the denials that the NPP neither sponsors these undesirables nor have they absorbed some of them into the statutory security services of Ghana. The NDC says the alarming content of the documentary goes further to cement the need for the president to reconsider his decision to reject the party's proposal to broaden participation in the process and the need for a mediator. Their justification: professional facilitators can ensure that all participants listen and are heard, that different perspectives and proposals are properly evaluated, and that effective consensus is built towards clear, actionable outcomes, all within a reasonable time frame. The party points to the fact that because members of these militias who are degrading our politics also provide land guard services to the highest bidders and protect prominent politicians, provides a compelling and persuasive argument that the NDC and NPP cannot do it alone. The letter ends with another firm commitment from the NDC side saying, quote, Ghana deserves a more serious approach to this serious matter than a mere encouragement to the chairman of our respective parties to engage in telephone conversations. The NDC stands ready to commence detailed process structuring at your earliest convenience, unquote. We await a response from the president. But while we wait, the campaign to disband party militias now continues.
Now, it's been almost 3 weeks since the president directed the two leading political parties to meet and decide a way forward in dealing with the growing threat to state security by these militias. The inability of the NDC and MPP to convene a simple meeting questions the commitment of the two in tackling the issue as directed by the president. How much more difficult could this be, and what other options can be explored to quickly nip this menace in the bud? Deputy Majority Chief Whip Matthew Nyendam thinks the president has an alternative to disband party militias through legislation.
The president made a very good call to all political parties, especially the NDC and the MPP, to meet and develop a roadmap to disband these vigilante groups.
They say based on this video, they've lost confidence in him.
That is what the president has done. The president has given another alternative, that if they refuse, if they are not able to do it, he is going to initiate a legislation to disband it. So the president is not relying on them. He has another option. And if this option fails, he's going to initiate legislation to disband them.
So if the NDC decides to pull out?
If they decide to pull out, obviously the second option is going to take place because he's asked them to do it. But if you are not able to do it, I will do it my way. And so if they decide that they've lost trust in the president, we have all saw what happened, all by-elections that were bloody. No president was bold enough to initiate what Nana Addo is doing. I commend Nana Addo, and I think that, look, those boys who claim they are in the council doing what and what, the president is not endorsing anybody. He's not endorsing anybody. A removal of the president, the constitution makes it clear. They should go ahead and see whether it will fly or it will not fly. That's their democratic right. You can't stop them.
What is the unnecessary facility?
But do you think that this exercise they are journeying, or this route they have decided to embark on, where will it lead them to? Just me.
I am joined by my colleague Kojo Yankson for more on this back and forth between the two leading political parties in this matter and the latest development. Kojo, you've been going through all the letters that have been written. It's quite interesting. I don't remember at any point the NPP or the NDC and the presidency sharing this kind of correspondence. Tell us what you've been able to discover so far.
In fact, the last time so much correspondence flowed between two parties was probably back in secondary school. But yes, the NDC first wrote to the president, or the chairman of the NDC wrote to the president first, and indicated that letter was a formal response to the call that the president had made during the State of the Nation address for the two parties to get together and resolve this issue of party militias. Now, the letter also sought to set out the position of the NDC. And to quote the letter, set out the position of the NDC in direct reference to the nature and thrust of your request. That's how they addressed the president in that first letter. So it wasn't so much suggestions or requests, but it was a communication of the party's position on how they wish to engage on the matter of a meeting to disband party militia. They went on to explain all the reasons why they felt that it was important to have not just more stakeholders, but also an identified mediator. And they even suggested as mediator, peacekeeping, the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center, as well as the UNDP, NCCE, IDEG, all in addition to the National Peace Council. So then they also sought a clarification. I don't know if most people have forgotten about this. They sought a clarification about whether or not the work of the ongoing work of the commission must be allowed to conclude before the parties engage, since there is an expectation that the commission will be addressing some manner of roadmap for the disbandment of these militias. And then, of course, they went on to talk about some accusations. And this is where I suppose the president's response sought to focus. And this is, I'll quote quickly, they said, revelations that the commission established clearly that elements of the vigilante groups apparently sponsored by your party have already been absorbed into the security system, a development that dramatically changes the normal character of vigilantes as we've come to know it, and gives it a real potential for instability, as the Ayawaso by-election amply demonstrated. So this, I suppose, I mean, can you imagine if the president had not addressed this? It would have left on the record an accusation that the NPP have absorbed members of vigilante groups into national securities, something which they had denied.
So this was the first letter. We've been joined by international relations expert Dr. Vladimir Intri. Would come to him shortly on how we can really build a consensus on this issue and move forward from this meeting that has not Intri down. So I beg Vladimir Intri down. So on this meeting that has not even started yet, hasn't happened. It's been almost 3 weeks. Could you so quickly tell us what the president
responded promptly, and he started off by saying he was encouraged by the positive nature of the NDC's response. But then he went into what he described as obvious misrepresentations and misstatements, if not palpable falsehoods, that form part of the letter that the NDC had written. So at this point, the president was being categorical. No evidence at the short commission about the sponsorship by NPP of vigilantes into the national security system. That was the first thing he sought to debunk. And he even added that to make such a claim would be prejudicial to the work of the commission, for citizens to start drawing such conclusions. And if you are to agree with the president on that such a claim is prejudicial, then you would also have to agree that the president claiming that no such sponsorship has taken place and none will take place is also prejudicial to the work of the commission, which is the body which will ultimately determine whether such a thing has taken place or not.
I'll come back for you to finish on that, the president's letter and the NDC's latest response to that. But let me go to Dr. Vladimir Intri. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
You're welcome.
What would your reaction be to this back and forth between the president and the NDC over this meeting that he expected the MPP and the NDC to have?
Well, I think we need to be more serious than what we're doing. In negotiations, you don't go to the negotiating table with a heart that tries to insulate you from blame in the future. Go with a clean head, and then you lay your direction. You play your cards, the smaller cards first and the bigger ones follow. And so it's a give and take. We have reached a point where we can call it a mutually assured destruction point, MAD. And I think what the president wants to do is for these two parties to meet face to face and find directions for resolution. It doesn't mean, I think, personally, I think the president doesn't mean the two parties should sit down and resolve the issue. There are several issues on the table, and if the two parties can see face to face in each other's eyes, first accept the very fact that we have reached a point. We are at a juncture where we need to depart from that path. How do we depart? When they lay the table, and I believe the NDC could have put those cards down when they meet, that we want the Christian Council, we want this council, we want this to come, and then people will say, okay, we want that, and we want that. We maybe want the smaller parties also to come in. So I believe there's no need at this point to be stretching issues. Let them meet. My personal take is let them meet and then discuss these issues there. Issues about who should be the arbiter, who should be the negotiator, who should be whatever. They would necessarily need an arbiter or a negotiator. The president has not chosen one for them. And I believe those of us who have done very little in negotiation, we believe it's one of the ways to go. Go name your own negotiator. The president could have done that, like we did in the Dagon case. But here it is that it says meet and find pathways towards resolution. And I believe they should now do that, irrespective of what interests they have. Their interests will be shown when they meet. And then this one says, I want that. This one says, I believe in that. And then they put it on the table for us all to find a resolution to this cancer.
If I get you right, Doc, you're saying that this NDC letter, the initial one to the president, speaking about the need for a mediator, was premature.
Yeah, somehow, yes. Somehow. I wouldn't use that word, but I'm saying those things they were asking of the president could have been done also when they met today, so that they their own direction. Then people would accept that, okay, the Christian Council can come in. They are asking for a broader kind of circle. There is a possibility that then you also can say, no, let's get an arbiter, let's get a negotiator. Get one person or one institution to be the negotiator. You know, that's how negotiations are done, honestly speaking. But you don't start by trying to show how negotiations would go. Because if you do that, it breaks down very early. There will be really be fights over the venue, who should be who, and whatnot and whatnot. If you ask trained negotiators, they will tell you this is a big problem when you are into negotiation. So if the two of them meet straight or eyeball to eyeball, and then they decide the roadmap. When they have decided, it may be one negotiator in between them, or one arbiter, or a series of institutions.
Okay.
Then they all agree on that. That's my take on the whole thing.
All right, Doc, so how do you suggest we get around this letter writing and have the meeting proper that you're suggesting here?
I strongly suspect that in a goodwill thing, the two party heads, the chairman, should meet on their own, without any instruction. They should forget about the president's instruction and meet on their own to discuss things in between them, one-on-one, and then start the process. Alternatively, I strongly suspect that there is also the possibility that some good Samaritan, a good negotiator, and we have a few ones of them in the country, could just rise and put them together outside the presidency, outside the two parties. Just call them. We have very prominent persons in Ghana. Let us say Akufo is calling the chairman of the political party. Come, let's talk. So that they set the process going. So either some person of high repute in Ghana starts it, or an institution will start it, or they themselves, the two of them, should meet and start the process, leaving the presidency behind and all that. Before they come to what is the president is saying and what they themselves are saying, they must start something, and now.
Now, this meeting you talk of between the two chairmen of these parties, would you want them to leave it at that, or you would want a more elaborate meeting after? Because the NDC is also asking for, the scope to be widened to include other political parties and even international organizations.
What I'm saying is that it's a little premature to start widening things. You see, these are conditions one is laying before we start negotiating. And it's wrong in negotiation. Very wrong. any negotiator will tell you. And they have specialists within their ranks who know what negotiations are all about. It's on goodwill. Negotiations is just goodwill. There are hard bargaining, soft bargaining, negative ones, positive ones, but you are arriving at yet. In fact, arriving at yet is a burgeoning kind of idea behind negotiation. If all of you want to arrive at yes, then you start slowly. And I believe the 2 meetings will be the start of that slow process, where they will then lay either wise. For example, when I heard about this, whatever I did, the 2-party meeting, I was thinking that, yes, they may be going there to brawl. Why don't you add the smaller parties? Because we all have interest in whatever it is. But you start off that process when the 2 who have their vigilantes left and right meet, and they have interest. When they meet and they said, okay, first they have decided to stop it. 2, how do we go about when you seek to bring those checks on the table? Let's add this, let's subtract this. But they haven't met, and everybody is now bringing in the check. It's wrong.
Doc, let's go to the issue proper, which is vigilantes, or as it's known now, militias. There are some who say that the problem is being exaggerated. You have visited other African countries, and in fact, I've heard you on some platforms say that you've trained other generals in countries that have had issues with civil war and all that. Do you believe, or are you on the side of those who say that, look, we are exaggerating this issue? It's not what we are claiming it to be.
My dear, let us not talk about exaggeration. Things start very slowly. They boom. There is no stopping. Everybody becomes a crazy person. Nobody thought Liberia would be what we saw in '89. I visited Liberia. 3 weeks later, the whole thing started. But when I was there in Monrovia, there was nothing. There was nothing saying that something like that was coming. Burundi, Rwanda, whatever it is. And let me tell you, Boko Haram started off this way. When governors needing to get their governorship started training people to protect whatever interest they had. Then they turned it into a charity organization. They turned it into Makaranta schools, gradually warming themselves up because you see, and Boko Haram is Boko Haram today as it started gradually like that. So let us not talk about exaggeration. Today, if you watch out, all the ingredients for chaos in Ghana tomorrow are there. We are an undisciplined society. There's so much bribery and corruption. Institutions of state are weak and belted under the hypnosis of the governor. And all those ingredients that calls for or that are necessary for chaos are in Ghana. So if this vigilantism is cut onto all that I'm saying, and there is an innocuous situation, it could be a small boy throwing an NDC boy throwing a ball at an star, and then there will be that will be the fact. So let us not say it has been exaggerated. Under normal circumstances, vigilante is not a bad thing. President Liman himself endorsed it and asked all of us in various institutions to form vigilantes to ensure that corruption is there. The Asafo companies we see in Ghana are vigilantes. But we have gone beyond that and using them for political gain. And that is the most dangerous aspect of it. It is not exaggerated. It is a reality. And if we think it's only a perception, perceptions have reality in them.
Thank you very much for your time this morning. Dr. Vladimir Nchidanso is an international relations expert, and he's worked in mediation and in other countries where war has been reported, and so he is an expert in this field, if you may ask me. Back to you, Kojo Yankson. Briefly, we've been talking about the correspondence between the NDC and the presidency, and you just heard Dr. Vladimir say, look, cut it already. Go straight to the negotiation table and do the work.
And you can see why Dr. Nchidanso, with all his experience, would go straight to that point, because it would appear that a lot of the content of these letters are just grandstanding. The sort of thing you see when people are not particularly looking forward to a negotiation, but can't really let on that they're not on board. Okay, so it means that the commitment is only skin deep. It's not yet, from the core. And there is so much evidence of it. The president's letter to the NDC, the response that the president gave. So many issues in there.
Sorry, I'd have to do this again because we've got the chairman of the National Peace Council. They've responded to the NDC's earlier letter suggesting that they would want the Peace Council, for example, to be an arbiter in all of this. And Reverend Professor Emmanuel Asante joins us on the phone. Thank you so much for your time this morning, sir.
Good morning.
All right. Right, Reverend, has anything changed from, our last conversation on the NDC's letter? You spoke to my colleagues here at JoyNews. Has anything changed?
Well, let me tell you that when I spoke to you, I mentioned to you that the NPC was ever prepared to play the role as an arbiter. But I did say that once the two parties have agreed, since that time, we have also received a letter from the president, a letter that everybody knows, suggesting that the two parties themselves should be able to meet without arbiters. We have already written to the NDC and also to the president indicating our preparedness, our readiness to mediate should it become necessary for that to be done. At the moment, it seems to me that, we are trading letters. Whilst we're doing that, the issue is not being addressed. We are very much concerned about that. And the NPC is ever prepared. We are ever ready. We will do the best that we can covertly to try and see if we can get the two agree on something that will enable us address that issue.
Right, Reverend, what about flipping the scripts? Has the Peace Council considered, since you just said that while they are trading letters, the issue or the problem festers, have you considered flipping the scripts and this time round inviting these two parties and having a meeting with them on the matter while they wait to have their own meeting that hasn't happened in 3 weeks already?
I think I have indicated that there are so many things that we cannot discuss in public that we have in mind that we are seeking to do covertly. Some of these things is not a matter of discussing such things in public before you go to the elders and all that. So we are concerned as you are, and we want to get it going. We will do the best that we can to address the issue.
Prof, before you go, what is the Peace Council's agenda independently to also deal with this problem of vigilantism or militias?
I think you already know that even before the Ayawaso Ogon issue, the Peace Council, together with the NCCE, EDT, had already conveyed a meeting involving the various political parties.
Exactly.
We have dealt with the issue. We were going to issue a document and send the report to the president on the basis of some of the studies that have been conducted by CDT. You know that at that meeting, I think your representatives were there, and some of your representatives even made comments and all that. So it's not the first time we are dealing with it, and we are not just talking about it because everybody is talking about it. We started talking about this a long time ago, and we will continue to do the best that we can to see what can be done. Right today, I'm very much aware that the Image Short Commission has it's finished its job. They'll be writing their report. We'll be very much interested to see what they come up with and bring all these things together to try to see whether something couldn't be done to address this political militia and vigilance, or whatever name you want to give it to. So as far as we are concerned, we will do the best that we can covertly or overtly to try and facilitate sort of a dialogue that will enable us address some of these issues. Unknown to a lot of you, 2012, the Peace Council, together with some groups, some people calling themselves machos or vigilantes for peace, worked together to try as much as possible, even to talk to the very people who were involved in these matters. We did it covertly, unknown to the public, so that, people will not use their strength and those kinds of things to promote violence. But we'll continue to work. We'll do the best to use all the facilities available to us and whatever we can do to ensure that.
Sure. Thank you very much for your time this morning. That was Right Reverend Professor Emmanuel Asante. He's chairman of the National Peace Council. So, Kojo, back to you. We've heard from these two very respected people in Ghana's society, an academic and a reverend and an academic as well. Quickly, just give us some brief details of what you've been able to gather from these letters that have been sent to and fro the presidency.
Right. So I indicated that there is a certain, there's some evidence in these letters that perhaps these two parties are not as willing to come to the table as we may think. The president's response perhaps gives the first clues when he says that regarding the NDC's request for mediators and facilitators for the dialogue, he's dismayed. He's dismayed and believes that Ghanaians will also be dismayed that the NDC is calling for mediators. And that this ought to be something that they should...
to be, what's so wrong with getting a mediator?
Indeed. That's a very valid question. What is the downside of having mediators? The president insists that the two parties should be able to deal with this matter themselves. And, I mean, he may be right. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. He may be right. But what is the downside of having mediators? It is clear that these two parties don't trust each other, and the people don't trust these two parties when it comes to militias. So, is it not better to be inclusive and have more eyes on what you do than to go behind closed doors, just the two of you, come back and tell us something and expect us to believe it? So, my thinking is that these letters really need to be wrapped up with one simple statement: let's meet on this day at this place.
Thank you very much. It's almost 3 weeks and counting. We wait to see. But you can join the conversation, hashtag disband party militias now.